Good morning and welcome to the Monday Morning Motivator Meeting. This is Jessica Magooch, CEO of JPM Sales Partners, sharing everything I learned recruiting, training, and leading a $100 million sales team for a commission-only B2B startup so you can do the same. Take what you want, leave the rest. And I have a very special guest here with me today. His name is Rob Kellner, and he's from Karma Calls. And I met Rob on LinkedIn. Now, you and I both know on LinkedIn, we get tons of messages from tons of marketers. I can generate you leads. I can generate you leads. Like, I know, let me show you the LinkedIn hacks, all that stuff. And then I got a message from Rob, and it was like, do you know what, this is what I remember it being, something like, do you know what karma calls are? And he started dripping out like the 4 phases or the 4 steps to karma calls to me. And as I saw the steps, I'm like, this is different. I need to have Rob on my show. So thank you, Rob, for joining us today.
Yes, I am absolutely grateful to be here, loving to share everything, and hopeful that will impact some people's lives in the next
Yes,
little bit.
absolutely.
It's all
So
about.
Rob handles, the beginning part of the sales funnel, and I help people handle the end of the sales funnel. So together we're like a dream team over here right in front of you. And so Rob, we're going to break up this into 2 parts. So first we'll let Rob, tell his story and what this is all about. And then we're going to share the step-by-step on how to actually apply karma calls to your business. So Rob, tell us your story.
Let's do it. So, little did I know on February 4th, 2016, that Karma Calls was going to be evolving, and I was on my way driving in an Uber into the city, and I wasn't in the back seat, and I wasn't in the passenger seat. I was driving for Uber on my way into New York City, and this was a pretty dark day for me. And driving for Uber was not in the plan. I come from a pretty privileged background, so after a tough 2015 is when I kind of decided to do it to help make ends meet. And I remember driving into the city and going over the bridge, and before I got even, my first request came in, and before I even picked up my first passenger, yeah, I sideswiped a yellow cab in Manhattan, and so it was not a great way to start off. Luckily, I gave the guy $100 and was able to go on my way, and that was the beginning of a really, really tough week for me. For that whole week of driving 12 hours, not speaking to anybody, people were rude. People were just, you felt like you were invisible. And after a week, I sat there on my bed saying, okay, how am I going to get through this nightmare?
Right.
And the answers that came to me were several things. Number one, I was going to turn this into a journey. I was going to be a beacon of positive energy. I was going to impact every person who got in my car. I was going to look for the beauty in every single person, and I didn't care who they were. They were going to talk to me because you were in my car, and I was going to do that. And one of the things I started doing right off the bat was, as soon as someone got into the car, I started expressing gratitude to them. Just simple saying, I'm grateful to you for taking my ride. And people just changed the climate of the call because they just weren't used to that, perhaps especially in New York City.
Right.
And I just started realizing I went from silence and rude people to people starting to be unbelievably kind and sharing and laughing, and I then started asking people their favorite quotes on the car calls as well. And the floodgates would just open because it was just a question that people have never heard before. And we just started, once again, sharing stories, because when it comes down to it, everybody has a story. And people would just wanted to go and be like, this guy cares about me. It's unconditional. I'm like in this safe zone. And some of the most, I've had some of the most wonderful interaction with people, but none of them compare to my ride, my 551st ride on April 13th, 151. How about that one for timing? This woman gets into the car, and I'm like, oh, and I knew there was something very different about this ride, but I didn't know what. And we had this special ride from it was Long Island to the airport. It's about a 40-minute ride, and the whole ride was just a flow of conversation that was just back and forth in this beautiful conversation. And when she gets out of the car, she gives me a card and says, "You should call me." And on May 24th of 2018, I would change Casey's last name from Delio to Kellner, and she became my wife. And what I recognized is the darkest day of my life. There's a few things. The darkest day of my life actually led to the most beautiful light and love in my life. So a day that I wish never happened is a day that I'm absolutely grateful for it happened. But it also gave me this amazing insight into sales from a perspective of human interaction and how you go and how what perhaps sometimes you see and feel on the face value, that if you can get through that, there's something so much more. And then once again, I realized that when you go and you express a tremendous amount of gratitude towards people, it's something that they're not used to. I knew when anyone got in this car, hey, you brought into your life, you brought in your whole life. I don't know if you just got divorced, a raise, you're moving, all these things. So I have to understand that while I want something, I have to appreciate that there's a whole world that you're bringing that I'm not aware of. And then you wrap that up with just incredible energy that just people cannot deny. And they're like, I want a piece of that. And my mission, once again, was there are people out there, and I said, all right, I need to leave them with more. My gift to them is giving them some of my energy. A lot of them need it. And knowing that there are other people who fed my energy because I came there, and they gave me just as much back. And I knew for every 20 people who I drove in a day, there were like 3 or 4 people who I literally just fell in love with from a spiritual way of like, wow, this person was so amazing. And it's all about looking for the beauty in others, and then they will find it in you. And when you approach your calls that way, and we can get into it, it's something magical happens that is much greater than a value proposition, overcoming objections, and the grind, and it becomes exhilarating because I know when I reach people, there are going to be 3 or 4 people who are going to be ready for me and who are going to be like, wow, thank you so much for that call. Everything I experienced in these short rides is transferable not only to a cold call, but any call, but in particular to a cold call. I'm like, wait a second, I found purpose here. These calls are purposeful. I am not an interruption. I am serendipitous. This is a serendipitous call that I'm going to, you're going to end your day remembering this call from a good way, whether or not we move forward or not. You're going to remember it because I either inspired you or made you laugh. And that's just what makes a day that what most people think is a grind is a day that to me is exhilarating. And I'm tired in a good way at the end of the day. I lose my voice, but it's not a grind. It's like, okay, here are the 4 or 5 people that was like, oh, great conversation. And that's hopefully my gift to the world is to realize we don't have to make cold calls anymore.
Awesome. So I'm gonna drop Rob's information below if you want to work with them, or either to help you with your cold calling or to cold call for you. And make sure to join us in the next part of this series because Rob's going to outline his 4-step method for creating karma calls, which are the polar opposite to cold calls. We'll see you then. Bye. It's the Monday Morning Motivator with Magooch.